Traditional strategies, they don't work anymore.
AI is making decisions faster than we can understand them.
Everyone's selling answers. Nobody has the truth.
Disruption isn't coming. It's already here.
Who's willing to cut through the bullshit?
Outwired.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Outwired. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks and Modern Campground. Excited to be back here for another week with the esteemed Scott Bahr from Cairn Consulting Group. Scott, how you been?
I am doing wonderful, thank you.
It's good to hear, man. It's good to hear. It's a lovely day outside. I'm enjoying what little warmth we get in Canada here for about another 2 months. Although maybe I was watching yesterday in my rabbit holes that I go down with YouTube, I was watching about the super El Nino and how the El Nino might warm up Canada for a little bit of the winter, at least my side of Canada for the winter. So there's super El Nino that's supposed to just be crazy warm for us, even bigger than a regular El Nino. So might end up benefiting us. We'll see. Hurting a lot of other places in the world, but benefiting us maybe over winter.
And you can continue having your sessions outdoors, which is nice.
It is I don't know what people are afraid of the cold for. I like the cold. I used to work for Time Warner Cable back in the day and install cable before I owned my own business. The worst thing that I hated was the rain. Once you're wet, you stay wet. But for snow, all you have to do is just wear the appropriate clothes, man. That's all you got to do, and you're fine. Even at negative 30, negative 40, that's all you got to do. It's just a layering thing. And you can't buy shit from Walmart, right? You're not gonna stay warm with that stuff. I mean, you could try, but there's people up here who buy stuff from Walmart and are freezing cold all winter too. But yeah. So I think a couple things on our agenda, and I'll ask you what's on your desk in a second today. We're gonna have a little bit of a brief, shortened. That's the word I'm going for. Shortened show today, just because you and I have some things we got to take care of. But there's two things that I wanted to talk about. One is a continuation, I guess, a little bit of our conversation on Fireside Chats earlier, where we were talking about, just briefly on that show, about how there's the affordability issue of people who are kind of going down, and then there's the people who, for now, can spend and who are going up. And then we talk about the K-shaped economy, which is cutting out the middle class, but also cutting out a lot of the middle class RV parks, because a lot of them are the same, and for all the reasons that we've talked about with experiences in the past here. But I'd like to delve a little bit more into that too, because I think, we'll delve into a little bit more about that. Let me give my thoughts later after we get into that. But that, and then we want to talk a little bit about glamping and how I think there's an argument to be made that glamping is completely made up. The word, right? And maybe I'm hoping you'll prove me wrong. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I think it's.
We'll see.
I think it's kind of like this trend. Do you remember? And I don't know how many KOA conventions you go to. And not to pick on KOA, this is happening at all conventions. But I specifically remember KOA. It was 2015, 2016, something like that. But just everywhere you look, there were the sessions on how do I attract millennials to my park.
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about? Google. Millennials still use Google. Why are you overthinking this and taking people down until it, right? And so I think I'm going to play on that and just say, again, obviously there are differences in the psychology of, younger millennials, older millennials, age gaps, differences, Gen Z, Gen A, all that, not to strip away that and say there's not that nuance anymore. But I think people just tend to overthink and course correct and focus narrowly on so much of a narrow one word that really I think that's why we can't define it, just because it doesn't exist.
Right.
We've just made it up as an industry.
And someone made up the term without really knowing what it meant
Yeah.
at the time, not
No,
having
to that to them, right? To that one person.
right. But they didn't. I don't think they had a clear vision of what it all could encompass.
Yeah.
And I also and we can get into that in a little bit.
Get into that. All right. So what came across your desk this week first?
I'm gonna say there's a finding in one of my recent surveys that I can't talk about in too much detail, but it's just enough, I think, because to me it is so relevant, and it completely reinforces something that I've been trying to push for the last few years, and that is the idea of how someone having a knowledge base, and I'm going to even qualify it further, a hands-on knowledge base of how to participate in our industry in terms of how to be a guest, how to do the basics, how to pack, what to bring, how to build a campfire, how to cook over a campfire, how to plan groceries, how to drive an RV, how to park an RV, how to set up your RV, how to dump your tanks and fill your tanks in your RV, how to do the slide outs, all those things. It's really complex. We talked about it a little bit earlier.
Yep.
But to me, the reinforcing finding here is that we can now quantify that and show how anyone out there who is lacking of whether it's just perceived or it's real, the confidence and background and knowledge of how to do these things, of how to participate at a certain level, fully determines whether or not they will actually participate. And it is one of the strongest predictors of lack of participation. And on the flip side, among those who have built a knowledge base, who have built and increase, when I say built, I mean like actively who have grown their knowledge, who have grown their skill set, they are some of the most loyal and most avid participants that we can have looking forward in terms of that long view. It is that strong. It is that important. And it's something that I still feel like the industry tends to minimize. Again, we had a little bit of that conversation on Fireside Chats earlier, which I was really happy about, because it is, until you get there, until you get people the confidence to do these things, because our sector, our industry requires more of the participant. And I think the guy from the UK, Derry, he was kind of talking about this a little bit too, that, the idea that, people have it or don't have it, but there's also a lot of work involved sometimes in doing, participating. And, hopefully what we hope is that there's a reward at the end of that. If it's too difficult, or if the person doesn't have the knowledge and the confidence, the reward isn't there. But the reward for many, though, is I pulled this off. I did, not to go down this rabbit hole too far, but the idea that you could plan a trip, that you did all the things that you needed to do. There's a certain level of satisfaction in that, in and of itself. Like, I planned this trip. We executed all the logistics. We didn't just throw our stuff in a bag and show up. And that in and of itself, and we did some research several years ago with like teens that showed that the more they were involved in trip planning and participation in the preparation, the more likely they were to continue to participate as well. So, excuse me. This is such an important issue. And again, I don't know why the industry overall hasn't embraced it further, but I think in order to thrive, we're going to have to. And that's what came across my desk, because it was really fascinating. It's super interesting. I can't wait to be able to show everyone the actual figures of what came out of that, so you can see it visually how strong the relationship is.
All right, so I want to play devil's advocate just for funsies. What if we're all just wasting our time doing all that shit, man? And here's why. You're right. And I'm not saying I believe this. I'm playing devil's advocate. Okay. Here's why. Do you remember when? And almost everybody does. Like probably 2007, 2008, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, depending on who you are in the industry, whatever else. When everybody was out there saying like, you have to have a website and you have to have online reservations. And it took years to convince park owners they needed websites, and then it took even longer to convince people that they needed online booking. And still to this day, probably like, I don't know, 30-40% of the outdoor hospitality business in the United States doesn't have outdoor or doesn't have online, or probably the RV park industry, not outdoor hospitality, because now glamping has jumped that percentage up, right? But here's the thing that interested me, and I gave these stats at Florida. I think you had to take off before my presentation, but this is part of my presentation at the Florida conference, was that what we uncovered in Florida was that the parks who didn't have a good website and didn't build a social media presence specifically actually ended up being busier in 2026 than those who weren't, because they had a loyal following of people who had been coming for 30, 40 years, the old hat parks that pre-existed social media, when we actually had to communicate with each other and talk, and word of mouth was a thing that didn't involve the internet and direct messaging and Instagram and everything else, right? And there's an argument to be made that those parks who existed for 30 to 40 years and didn't go on social media had a built-in audience that carried them through just fine to the other side of now maybe they don't need a website or social media, because now we're flipping this switch into like where AI might end up doing everything for us. Now, I'm not saying I believe that either, but I'm just saying there's an argument to be made that maybe they were right and we were wrong, that not everybody did need a website and online booking, or maybe a website or whatever it is, right? One or the other, et cetera, macro level, right? So going back to what you're saying, I agree with the principle of everything that you're saying. Like you don't need me to tell you this. Your research is flawed, right? You don't need me to say that. I agree with the premise of your research, and I haven't seen your data either. I'm looking forward to seeing it when you release it. I question though whether in 5 to 10 years that it will be necessary to teach someone these skills. Now, to your point, there's still going to be a lot of value in somebody like me or you or a certain subset of the population, whatever that number may be, who finds the value in learning the things that you just said. Those people will always and forever continue to exist, right? But they will be people, just that small segment of people, they will be people who will adjust how they learn. In other words, I learn now through asking AI endless questions every single day, right? Instead of going and browsing 10 different sites, reading a bunch of blog articles, it's a time saver, but it's a shortcut, and it has enabled me to learn probably, I don't know, at least 125 times faster than I did before. Same thing with the leap to video, right? I can watch a YouTube video now and consume a whole lot more content visually, and that's me, and maybe that's how I learn, right? But I can consume it a whole lot more visually and faster, and thus learn things better, in my opinion, than I can reading a blog post. Again, that's a preference, right? But so if you look at these people who, I agree with you, as we talked about in the Fireside Chat show, right? And we've talked about many times on this show before, 100% on board. We need to involve people like Black Folks Camp 2, Gen Z, Gen A, or white people who have never been experienced to this stuff, like all kinds. Like it's not a gender thing. It is, but it isn't, if that makes sense, right? There are people of all shapes and sizes who we need to be more inclusive of in our industry in order to better prepare them for the outdoor experience. So did I walk that line fine enough without getting myself into trouble?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, good.
We're good.
But so my question is then, is as you are able now to not just ask ChatGPT questions like, how do I set up a tent, do whatever, right? How do I do this in my RV? Like Ralph was talking about, like he asked ChatGPT, like, what is the buttons on my RV? What do I press? How do I fix this thing around my house? Whatever else, right? As that becomes even pulled away from ChatGPT into your Meta smart glasses, your Google glasses are going to come out later this year, in a few months, I think. as more companies make those smart glasses, and you can start to ask just by looking. And then you get to the point where eventually, in let's call it 10 years for the sake of speed, I think it ends up being quicker for some people, but depends on lots of variables. You get to the point where you have self-driving cars that are ubiquitous all over the place, including self-driving RVs that can now park themselves and navigate, shift, and autonomously monitor all their systems and be able to report to the shop that something needs repaired and maybe not fix it yet, but flag it for being fixed, right? Preventative maintenance, things like that. Or just spit out to you in an audible conversation like, hey, go look at these things with your glasses and I'll tell you what button to press. Like, I feel like everything's going to be able to be done that way. The only thing that scares me is like the bomb disposal guy. I was thinking about that on the show earlier. I was like, I don't know if I would use the glasses to be like, do I cut the red or blue wire on the bomb before it blows up? But other than that, you know,
Right,
what if it hallucinates that? I don't know if I want to do that, right? But so that, and then eventually you get to a point where you have the self-driving cars, you have ChatGPT, you have the always-on ability to ask questions wherever you want. It's going to quickly become proactive with the monitoring or the telling you things to do right or what's wrong. And then you're going to get the robots, the full humanoid robots who are with you as companions. And whether that's 10 years, 15 years, whether it takes 20 years, like at most it's 20 years before almost everybody on the planet has one. Or if they don't own one, is able to lease one, have one, borrow one, rent one, whatever, right? Like kids who are less than 5 years old today will never, ever, ever know a world without AI always being available to them in robotics by the time they're an adult.
Right.
So if you get to that point then where then the robot is like, saw you were looking at this camping post on whatever the fuck we're looking at for social media in 15 years, right? Are you interested? Like, we could just go camping and I could just set up your tent for you and I can like buy your RV and I can drive your RV and I can program the self-driving car and I can do all the switches and I can set up the tent sites and I can make sure the bugs are kept away and I can sweep everything and I can take it all down when you're done. And so again, there's a gap between now and that, right? Just like there was a gap between needing the website and now perhaps not needing a website. What say you to that?
My response to that is the idea that one, we may or may not know how big and how long that gap will be. So
I don't think we do. I have no idea how long it's been.
But it's so that's one. Two is the idea that if you really want people to learn and participate, they have to do it. They have to do it. That as an example, we know from studies that people who actually read like a hard copy book retain way more than people who read on screen or listen to the book.
But how many, and I don't want to interrupt you, I want you to finish, but what's the percentage of people who are actually willing to put in the work to learn that stuff?
I think I don't either, but I'm going to say it's higher than you might realize, but you also may not need the actual number to be huge. You just need the reach of individuals. For example, if one person in your group knows how to do this shit, now you're in better shape. So say you have a group of 5 people going out. One person's the expert. They know how to do it all. They can either teach other people how to do it or they can do it themselves. But you still have that person that knows how to do it.
Wouldn't that also apply to the rich friend who has the humanoid robot before everybody?
Well, they could do that. But I believe that the way that you build involvement, you build avidity, and you build loyalty is by those people who actually do those things, because they get those intrinsic rewards from actually doing it. It's kind of like if you learned how to build, a coffee table, build your own. Yeah, you can go to IKEA or wherever and buy one. But if you build it yourself, it's like, look at this. This is fucking cool. It's great. I did it. That's very rewarding to that person. They're much more likely to do it again, to do something else. Maybe they'll try building an end table, maybe something else. For us, if we want people to continue to participate at a higher level, we need them to be much more involved in the process. We need them because they will take those rewards. Not everyone will, and there's always going to be the laggards that want to just fill that bag and go stay at a place. And we're all kind of like that. We want that opportunity to do that as well, but there's also a big space for people to do the other stuff. And I feel pretty strongly that we need to have them develop that level of interaction. For example, do you think that watching a YouTube video or an instructional video could help someone back a towable into a wooded site?
Generally, probably, yeah.
I would say they could get some of the basics, but until they actually do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. You're not going to be, I got you.
Okay. So to be proficient and confident in doing it, they're going to actually have to go out there and do it. And they're going to take a reward out of each time they do something like that. And that's kind of where.
Unless their wife is screaming at them or their husband screaming at them.
I think a lot of those people take pride in that. I hear that all the time too. Actually, I remember seeing this one couple. It's like the husband was outside doing the directing and she was backing it in, and I didn't say anything. And he goes, "Yeah, we switched roles because I was just sick of listening to it. And you know what? She's actually better at it than me." So it was kind of funny.
That's why I quantified it, right? So,
yeah.
So my question then is I think there's two different types of people here. And I think focusing only on one is a mistake. I think we focus on both of them. Because on one side is the person that you're talking about, the one who likes to acquire skills, learn new things. And there's no doubt, because I know me, and I'm not saying I'm like everybody else, right? But like we were talking about the food and stuff like that before the show again. Like I've become a drug dealer now. I probably should have said that on my TV. I learned that I can ferment California poppies, and I can end up making something similar to a non-addictive opium pain medication, right? Just by doing, and it's legal, right? It's not actually a drug, or an illegal substance anyway. It is a drug, but they used to use this all over in the early 1900s. It just went away. They used to prescribe it to people who were, they thought opium wouldn't work for, or were resistant to it, or didn't agree with their system, or whatever else, right? So, but the act of learning, and I haven't done it yet, right? But the act of learning that will make me want to do it again, or try something similar. The act of doing the first fermenting pickles in the basement now will be like, oh, I can ferment other things. Let me dive deeper into it. So then I become more loyal to the practice of fermenting, the same way somebody would become more loyal to the practice of camping or tenting or glamping or the outdoors or whatever it may be, hiking, nature, etc. So I'm with you there. That makes sense to me. I don't know what that percentage is, as we discussed. I think it's probably less than 20%, but you could convince me that it's up to 40 based on the fact that if people had more time in their lives, they might be willing to learn more about that. But then I look at all the time people spend on social media and on Netflix, and I'm like, everybody's got time if you really want to have time, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. So let's say that's an important piece of the audience, right? But the flip side of that audience is the people who don't want to learn, who just want to experience. And these are your I want to show up and just have an Airbnb. Be ready for me, right?
Yep.
And some of those people are not our people in our industry, right? They don't, because for whatever reason, they don't like the outdoors, they don't like bugs, they don't want to get in nature, they just want to, right? They're doing the Airbnb thing for a concert or whatever it is nearby. But some of those people, if you were able to curate the experience for them, either now through we've talked on this show before about setting up a luxury tent experience, right? So they can come and enjoy the outdoors and do what, just like Derry said, we're not selling accommodations, but we're helping you make the accommodation piece easier, thus allowing you to be able to connect to nature and the experiences and activities that are nearby that are the reasons you're coming, or giving you a reason to come because you can now experience the outdoors with less friction, which we talked about before too, right? But then, so those people, and then just allowing people to have a bridge to that gap of like, eventually I think you're going to have that situation where it's, whether it's AI that you're using as the owner and operator to help make the experience more seamless, or eventually both are using it, the consumer and the operator. And then we go into the AI and the robotics and all the things I talked about, right? Where there's no need to do that anymore. I think if you're set up for both of those futures, then there's a pretty good chance if you've done a great experience at your property and you're doing your marketing half decent, which will all be automated too in like 5 years, then I think you're going to be pretty much full, pending like, I don't know, the US dollar collapsing, which like could happen, like, but hopefully not. I mean, pending something terrible happening, right?
Right. But yeah, I mean, I agree that you need to, we need as an industry to account for both types. But right now we've over-indexed to the like the super easy, super convenient side of the equation.
I don't know that we have. I think we've over-indexed to the middle. The same reason I say that we've spent 40 years basically building parking lots for RVs. I think we've over-indexed to the boomer version of campground and RV park. I think that's over-indexed. I don't know that I would call what we do, because for all the reasons we talked about RVs and how Raf said they were more complicated, right? For all the reasons we have different types of tent setups, and people are doing less tenting at private parks, partially because of inventory, right, and other things. I don't know that we've over-indexed to easy. But
well, I guess my point there was that with the proliferation of, you know, glamping, however we define that, accommodations and higher end parks, that we've taken away some of the idea that you're going to be a little bit more self-sufficient, a little bit more. Okay. That option is, it's the low-hanging fruit right now, and people opt for it. But, you know, again, as we know that right now people just aren't taking as many trips as they used to, and you know that some of that is not economics. It's they just aren't. They're just not that into us. You know, so
because we don't have any difference makers, as we've talked about for like a year and a half on the show, right? Like, so, there are difference makers out there. They're just very hard to find right now.
Right, and to me, the idea is, if you want to get people to continue to participate, you got to find what it is that they connect to. And one of the things that people can connect to is doing things, being knowing these skills, having that knowledge base, having the confidence to execute it. It helps, and it may be enough to help some parks maybe boost themselves a little bit, you know, and it may be enough as an industry that if we reinforce it, we might see a little bit of growth to keep us flat, you know.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, you can take these things and you can give people a path. You can say during the booking process, are you a first-time camper or a repeat camper? Not with us, just period, right? Is this the first time you've been camping in your RV, or like in a lot, even a cabin rental or a tent? And then you can use tools like AI and automation to automatically decide, okay, this guest needs more help than another guest. Let me have AI automatically generate a PDF based on my specific campground that shows the lot dimensions and the walkthroughs and exactly how to set up a tent. And maybe in the survey, I can ask what kind of tent you have. And then the AI agent can go out and be like, this is your specific tent and how you do it. And here's your right. So I just think there's all kinds of ways that we can use automation, AI technology, as well as the personal touch that has to come with hospitality too. They're not mutually exclusive, not saying AI can replace everything. To identify these guests and to give them an easier path. To say, like, do you want to buy a package that includes setup on your booking engine? Sure, check a box. Setup is this, right? And we'll have your tent set up. Or when you get here, we will have someone set up your tent for you. Or maybe you want half assisted, and we'll come help you set it up for the first time and show you how to do it. So I think there's, like, again, not all of that is always practical, right? Not all of that makes sense from an ROI standpoint if you're a smaller campground and you don't have the bodies or the labor is expensive or whatever else. But there's so many different ways to think about this stuff that I'm not sure people have grasped, because there's not been a necessity to think outside the box forever in our industry. Some
Right.
people have. I'm not saying nobody has. I just said I don't think there's a necessity for people to have.
And we are past the era of people, and I mentioned this earlier today too, is the idea of risk. We're kind of beyond risk, really, that people are risk averse. I mean, in years past, I mean, people, if you talk to older people especially, they'll tell you about their camping trips that were disasters, sleeping in, being wet and miserable and everything. And they kind of took a little bit of pride in it because that's how they learned. They didn't know how to back in their RV and, knocked over a lamppost or something, and all these things. They made mistakes because it felt, and honestly, it was probably a little safer to make mistakes too in the past.
Yeah, but your mistakes in the past, and continue in a second, but your mistakes in the past were limited to like whoever was with you and whoever you told. Now, if you make a mistake, it's all over social media for 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, absolutely. So people are risk averse, and that's a huge contributor to it, obviously. So yeah. So again, that hinders the whole process to a degree. So yeah, I think I do think each of these topics that we've talked about, every nuance to it is an opportunity to think about, to consider, like, how do we do this? How do we execute this? How do we give people the skills to maybe do things that they haven't done before that will instill some confidence in them. I feel like confidence is a huge thing that people could use a little bit more of in general.
Probably. I mean, there are things, I don't know. Maybe I probably could use more confidence. I probably need to dial mine down a little bit. I'm confident in things I should not be confident in. But yeah, generally, like I think that comes from the era that we're in now, with social media and with people. I mean, I will tell you, like, I know so many people who love those YouTube fail videos on YouTube where you can go watch other people, like, and it came from like America's Funniest Home Videos, right? Is where it originally, I mean, maybe it didn't originally start there, but that's where I remember it starting.
Right. They popularized it at least. So.
Yeah. And now they're all over YouTube. I can't stand to watch those. I get just this queasy feeling in my stomach. Like, why the fuck? Why am I laughing at this? Like this misfortune of somebody getting smacked in the head with something or falling down, or like, it just feels wrong to me. But I'm apparently a minority. I don't know where it's going with that, yeah, I think there are so many different ways to set people up for success. And the first thing is identifying who that guest is and what their needs are when they're coming to your property. And even before they're getting to your property, speaking to those people and telling your story and saying, I have this available to you, but I also have this option if you're not comfortable, and I also have this option if you're even less comfortable. So there's something for everybody here. And I didn't want to say it like I have it's not that I'm afraid, but like I don't necessarily want to put Phil on the spot when he's on the show. Like I think our industry has to diversify away from RVs. I think we have to. I think outdoor has to, like, not eliminate RVs, but diversify away from the fact that we're, what would you say, 80% RV parks and private campgrounds.
Yeah, and I think it's happening organically, to tell you the truth. It just feels that way to me. I can't quantify it. I get, but it kind of feels like that's kind of happening. It feels like we're moving away a bit from RV ownership, actually, too. Not just out of necessity, but I feel like that there's a movement that people just don't want to own something, that, the RV itself, unless, obviously that's a whole other topic we could get into, but it's one of the things I've been tracking a little bit too, and that is the non-owner participation in RVing. And if you look at it, we do it in the camping report every year, and we have some new stuff on it as well, that non-ownership participation is growing. So while ownership is shrinking, people who RV but don't own it through other methods, renting, borrowing, whatever, is actually growing. So anyway, that not to go down that path, but just I do feel like in some ways the industry itself is organically moving away from RVs to a degree. I think they're going to change. They're too big. There's too many. The campgrounds have all been designed around these gigantic behemoths, and like you see, like everyone we talk to in Europe is just like, we don't have those. We have the smaller units, and this is much easier.
Well, said it on the show earlier. Like Derry said it on the show. Like they went through this 10 years ago, 10 years ago ish, where it went off a cliff for RV or caravan sales, right? It went off a cliff, and they were the smaller ones over there. Yep. I think it's the same thing, especially as you get into more of an affordability crisis.
Right.
And like the guy was the guy from McKay from Utah, or from Dwell Hospitality from Utah, Wyoming, I think he said Idaho, his other properties, said the same thing. Like as we get more and more people who can't afford housing, we become more like, I don't know if that's where, should we be cheering that on?
No, we shouldn't. No, and as Rafi mentioned too, that is it, or maybe it was him, that the other guy that said it too, that the idea that is it out of necessity or choice? It's yeah, if it's out of necessity, we shouldn't be cheering that. If it's choice, that's a whole different thing. If people want to do that, if that's what they're choosing to do. But if we're doing it because they can't afford housing, I'm not sure. I mean, the temporary work and stuff like that, that's all fine, and people want to live the van life for a while. That's cool. Do it. Do your own thing. But if people are doing it because they don't have a place to live and they can't afford a place to live, I don't think that's a great thing.
No, and so I think that's where we're dealing with basically what I think is going to be a split in the private campground industry, private outdoor hospitality industry, between the people who are now doing it for affordability and the people who will do it for the experience or have the disposable income. I think the middle of that is going to be gone too. We've talked about the middle of campgrounds, right? And I think you're going to get to the place where, I don't really have any interest in working for I don't know what that lower end looks like. Because right now arguably you've got a lower end already in manufactured housing. So if you're now taking a chunk of the RV park industry and you're attempting to move that into lower income long-term stays, I mean, Michael was saying, at some point the city council don't know what the difference between MH and RV is. If that happens, I don't know that I can tell you what the difference is either, other than one's bringing something on wheels and one's, they're all on wheels, right? Well, park models might not be.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, there's no real difference. So then are you essentially taking the bottom half of RV parks and becoming MH?
Right.
Because to your point of that post I shared in LinkedIn, and I don't have it pulled, or I think it was on a Facebook group, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but it was about long-term camping. I started to think when I read that, and we'll talk about the electricity in a second, right? But the rates that people are, it was somebody talking about how they charge, some of their competitors charge $500 a month for long-term sites in Texas. And I don't know I didn't look into whether that's seasonal or long-term or but it's $500 a month, right? So whatever it is, however long you stay. We'll talk about the sustainability of that in a second. But generally speaking, is it possible the long-term side of our industry has grown more because of the need this year versus the desire to be more long-term versus transient? Not that they're mutually exclusive, because certainly there are people who have decided to not drive as much and maybe be seasonal, right? For sure. But is the number higher or lower on which side? Because I tend to think if you've got a whole lot of people who are still offering stupidly low rates at $500 a month, $700 a month, whatever else, right? That if you index that just to inflation would probably be $1,000, $1,200 a month, which then is maybe comparable to a 2-bedroom apartment or something in a city, most cities, maybe a little bit more, depending on how rural you get, right? I don't know. I haven't looked at that apartment in America for a while, or ever. you know. But like, that's what I wonder. Like, maybe this increase in long-term interest that's happening all over the country a result of people who are unable to afford anything else, and thus, is that something you really want to turn your RV park into? Because your pricing power is gone then, right?
Right. Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think right. Yeah, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here in terms of the idea that, yeah, $500 a month is really cheap. That's underpriced in my view, as well as yours, obviously. The you know, where it's all heading, man, I feel like this is what we're all going to have to grapple with. All of us probably across the industry as to where it goes. I know other organizations are looking at this topic actively. It's like, what is the mix? What do we have? Do we do, again, the manufactured housing sections of campgrounds and parks? And it's like, I just feel that where people are looking at these parks to be proxy housing developments at some level, and the eventually what's going to happen though is the prices are going to catch up, and all these people that came in, at $500 a month are going to be looking at the $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 a month easily, and they're going to have to move on someplace else.
Because there's a ceiling where demand destruction hits too. This is the same thing with gas prices, right? Like, so there's an argument for both things, right? So you hear a lot, and you know how I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole a little bit with oil prices and stuff like that, related to not just mostly the Iran wars, the positive, right? But the oil prices. And you frequently hear people say in the oil market, they will say that like oil possibly could spike to 120, 150, $200 a barrel, whatever else, right? And we're not going to rehash the discussion why, but let's pretend it does. And then there's most people are on the side of like, if it spikes that high, then demand destruction will cap it at a certain point, and it will have to come back down because people will just adjust their behavior and not use the oil. But the flip side of that is, if you go to work in your car, you're not changing your behavior because you have to go to fucking work. So the demand destruction is not going to be as big as many people think it will be until you get to a point where you have literal businesses collapsing, which there are a significant amount behind the scenes that are not being reported on. They're happening already because of high diesel prices. That's the real demand destruction. And when you get there, that's an ugly place you don't want to be. But so my point, going back to the same thing, right, is at some point you have an entry into this market for let's just call it $500 to $1,000 a month crowd who own their RV or have went and bought some cheap RV, right? Or whatever else, to live on the site permanently, seasonally. They move every 6 months, whatever it may be, right? They're whatever. You have those people, and then, like, I don't know that you can ever raise rates to the extent that you get to $1,200, $1,300 a month on those people. I think those people who are charging $1,200, $1,300 a month eventually are going to have to come down to meet the market. And then, I think everybody else's expenses related to food and diesel and fuel and gas and electricity and everything else are going to go up, and then, or they're going to have to just be fixed there, right? Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I mean, do you attribute that to the fact that there's going to, this is where so many places are heading, and there's just going to be a lot of supply out there?
Well, right, but like, I think if you go, there's a certain point in a price ceiling. I don't know what it is, depending on what city you are. Like, I remember, I don't know, when I was living in downtown Cleveland in 2019-20, it was like $2,100 US a month for like, maybe it was 24, I don't know, for a really nice downtown loft apartment that was 1,400 square feet. Didn't have a balcony, anything like that, right? And that was downtown Cleveland. And I remember thinking, like, I looked at prices like in rural suburbs where I could still in Ohio at the time. I think I could like go way out, like an hour outside of Cleveland, get $700-800 a month for a 1 bedroom. So I don't know what those prices are anymore. But at some point, if you continue to raise the prices on people, you're going to get to the point where I can just go get an apartment. And there are way more apartments than there are RV parks or RV sites, which gives the apartments more pricing power, the lower. So at some point, you have an artificial cap on you based on like, I don't have to go buy an RV. I can just go get an apartment and then take that, right?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I think that's what you're dealing with in MH too, to a certain extent. Like, I think there are people who want to buy their house, and that's a great, amazing achievement for anybody who can buy a house, whether it's in a manufactured housing park, mobile home park, or whether it's a, I don't want to call it regular house, a standalone house, right? Because they're all homes. But I think at some point you have to address that. I don't know, that it's really an affordability crisis, isn't it?
It is.
And as this thing continues to roll downhill and get worse, you as the business owner, especially if you're already coming in from a pricing position of we are cheaper or more affordable, the place between where you are now at somewhere between $500 to $1,000 and where you need to go to eventually in a couple years pay all the bills because all your costs are going up too, is going to fuck a lot of people. I don't think you have the pricing power to get to where you need to go if your electricity is going up, your insurance is going up, your costs are going up, your labor is going up, right? Because I think you easily end up over $1,200-1,300 a month. And then when you come to your people and you're like, listen, I can't pay the bills if you're only paying me $500 a month. I need to raise you to $800, $900. Like, I don't have the money to do that shit. And then they got to leave. And then where do they go? They go to the $500 a month park that's not paying attention to their bills and maybe losing money. And then just, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, am I right? I mean, I might not be right, but like, does it make sense?
No. I think that does make sense. Obviously, it's market to market.
Yeah.
But yeah. I
like
mean,
the long term, like, sorry, finish.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it depends on again the market you're in, what the supply of both is. But you're in general, yeah, there are more apartments, and people are going to make that calculus and those decisions, and maybe these people that are building these long-term parks right now in a few years could find themselves in going from what they think is very reliable income to much less reliable, shall we say?
Well, not less reliable, but less affordable, or less.
Or, well,
yeah.
I mean,
like the reliable income will be there as long as you can keep your price low.
Right. Well, exactly. That's the caveat. I mean, because if you raise your prices, then it's not you're going to start
as affordable. But at some point, you're going to be forced to do this. Is why, like, and I'm probably going to get hate email from this, right? This is why the Mondami guy in New York City is a fucking idiot. You can't do rent control on people who own apartment buildings because the people who you're trying to do rent control on also have their expenses going up. So all you end up doing by freezing rent is, yes, you look good to the people who are renting, but you just end up causing deferred maintenance and all kinds of other problems in situations where we had before when we tried to do rent freeze control in other cities where people are burning their buildings down for insurance because it's unsustainable. Everybody's costs are going up, right? On both sides of the renter and the owner. And so at some point, like, I'm worried there's a cap. And I think the people that are all in on developing these properties and have been doing so, just like the RV park industry, I think MH has gone crazy over the last 5-6 years.
Absolutely.
Because you see all these people, like, especially, like, I think MH is more popular on the investor side of the market, hedge funds, all that kind of stuff, right?
Correct.
Because there's a whole lot more money to be made over there. But I think the money to be made is by swooping in, making a couple super small changes to the manufactured housing community, and then doubling rent. That only works for so long. And then at some point, like, your caps are there. and you can't get beyond that market, especially when you're asking them to purchase the property. So I'm not saying I have any good answers here. I'm just saying that all this stuff that needs to be thought about. And I don't know how many people are thinking about it. Surely some are. Lots of smart people, right?
There are, but I don't know. I think we're in for a heck of a ride in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just tied together, right? Like everything is, as we've said with Iran and everything else, it's all looped together. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, go read about why the U.S. government just propped up the Japanese yen, because if they didn't, it would have caused the dollar to crash. It makes no sense until you understand it. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. And then once you can't unsee it, you're like, shit's going to get fucked a little bit here, maybe. But anyway, yeah, it's all tied together. You have to think about the holistic picture of everything that could potentially or not potentially happen to the best of your ability, and then take the top 5 most important things out of that list of 100 and say, I'm going to plan for these. Because otherwise it gets overwhelming, right? Like you can't
Sure.
foresee
You end up shutting down, like, mentally, because it's
But like the post, Facebook post or whatever, the purpose of the post, somebody was talking about electricity. And she's like, I run a long-term park and I'm charging X number of dollars. I can't remember. Do you have it in front of you? Do you have it in click up there where I shared it with you?
I can. I'll find it right. Where'd it go?
Just read it to the audience if you can.
Oh, there it is. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Oh, you want me to share my screen?
No, just read it. Read it.
Okay. It says, I'm in Texas, and most of my monthly sites are $500 plus electric paid separately. The park electric is 14 cents kilowatt hour, and the highest electric bills this month were $409, $348, $310, $305. Most were about $175 to $250, with very few at around $100. The 2 RV parks near me charge $500, all bills paid. How do they stay in business?
So there's a couple things here to unpack. One is how they stay in business. Got me, right? But 2 is like that impacts your pricing power too. All the pricing power that we just talked about by matching the rent in the local area. As you see electricity and all these other costs go up in people's lives, that creates even less of a room for your price ceiling to increase when you're already the affordable option, right?
Yep.
So if somebody's paying $500 to you for rent and they're paying $408 for electricity, and then they're paying taxes and they're buying food and they're buying everything else, right? That $400 in electricity, I'd be willing to bet it was $250 2 years ago, maybe even last year.
Sure. And their cost per kilowatt hour is not that bad. Here in Maine, we're paying, I think, twice that, at least twice that right now.
That's crazy. That's insane. I told you I'm paying 8 cents a kilowatt hour in Canadian dollars, which is like 5 cents US.
Yeah.
Plus the transmission, so
we're close to 30 cents.
But our electricity company is also city owned. So
okay, yeah.
But yeah, like so then the second piece of that is like, if you are one of those parks who like your hands off your MH or your long-term RV, more long-term RV, right? Your long-term RV, and this is either new for you or you're used to coasting along for the last 20, 30 years, and you, like almost everybody who has a life that's not named Brian and doesn't research this stuff like crazy, right? You don't understand the impacts of inflation and economics and how the Fed raises rates and prints money and it's a tax on you and blah, 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 right? You don't understand all this stuff. Nor do you probably pay super close attention to your electric bills in many cases. Although now you might, right? Now that this massive increase has happened over the last year or two. And I don't think people necessarily get into the connecting the dots. Right? Like I think people look at the holistic picture of their bills, or they have an accountant look at this once a quarter or once a year, And you're like, fuck, I just made less money than I did last year. But are you really taking the time to dive into it and realize that it's your electric that's the problem, or whatever it is, right? I
The
don't know
way,
if they're doing it.
yeah, the way energy costs are going, I think, I don't know, offering, all bills paid is highly risky. And yeah, you're probably going to fill up your park, but the difference between those two parks is one, they're both charging 500, but one is actually bringing in $500 per site, and the other one's bringing in 200, maybe. It's kind of like, what line would you want to be in if you're a park owner? As a guest, you're like, you have some control over that too. I mean, you think about it from the guest perspective. It's like, if everything's all paid, what's your incentive to actually cut back on your electric usage? I mean,
Well,
you're
yeah.
going to light it up like a stadium. It's like you're going to be, playing World Cup games at near your site. It's like whereas the person who has to pay their own, it's like they're going to manage that a little bit better. They're going to manage those costs overall.
To the
So
extent that they can. But then,
Yeah.
so then play that out, right? Play this out. So let's say you're an RV park right now that's charging between $500 and $750 a month, and maybe you're all in on utilities. Maybe you don't meter and you just have a flat fixed rate for electric or whatever else, right? Which is probably a large chunk of long-term parks that have been long-term for a number of years, right?
mhm.
And like, play that out in the consumer's mind. There are a whole lot of people. So, like, do you have a calculator in front of you, Scott? Let's do some math. I do have my phone in front of me, but if I pick it up, you're not going to be able to see my beautiful face. And I don't want to deprive the audience.
Hang on just a minute. I'll pull up my calculator. Okay.
All right. So, what would you like? I know federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.75. What do you think the average worker makes in the United States? Is it $15 an hour? Probably less than that, right? 12?
Yeah.
We're talking about lower income, right?
Yeah. Let's go with 15 though, just because.
All right, let's take 15. All right, so let's say you are you're making $15 an hour. You're working full time, 40 hours a week, times 4 is how much net or gross income do you have per month?
So $2,400. That's $15 an hour for 40 hours a week for 4 weeks.
Okay, now you've got taxes, which is what, 20%? What, I don't know what the rate is in the States now for that.
It's about that. Makes 19.
How much do you have left after that?
So 2880.
Can't have more. So that's 2,400.
Oh yeah, sorry, I added that. So the taxes on that would be 0.2. Oops. Jesus, I'm not used to using this damn thing. I can't hardly see it.
Sorry.
It's all right.
The good thing is once you learn how to use it, Scott, you'll stick with it.
That is correct.
You're welcome.
So 480 is the tax.
Okay, so then you're talking about then 2,400 minus 480 is 2,960. No, 2,920.
1920.
2,919.
1920.
Oh, yeah, 1920. Sorry, yeah, 1920. Okay, 1920. All right, so you got $1,920 left over, right? Now you've got, let's say, your rent at the low end of $500 for an RV park spot.
What was that?
For $500 on the super low end for your RV site, right? So now we're down to $1,420.
Yep.
And then you've got your electric bill. Let's say that's somewhere in the middle ground of like $200. So you got $1,220 left. Now, let's say you're a single person because we've only counted one income, right? You're a single person. What are you spending $400 a month in groceries? Is that fair? Is that too little? I don't know.
You're a single person. That's not too bad. That's 820.
820 left. Then you got your cable, electricity, or we already did electricity. You got your cable, your cell phone bill, whatever else, right? What's that? Another 300? 200?
250 we'll say.
Miscellaneous. Okay, take that away.
570.
570. What else am I missing for expenses? Gas in your car and a car payment and a gas in your car. So let's say you're paying what, $200 a month for your car? Is that fair? If you have
We're
a
at
lease?
370. Yep.
And then you have gas to put in your car, which depending on where you work or don't work, right? You got to commute. So how much is that per month? I don't know. I don't
I'd
have a
say
car.
another 100, 120 at least, probably.
All right, so what does that leave us then?
We're at 250.
Okay, so you got $250 left to do something discretionary with. Buy your dog food, like right? Buy rent a movie, go on a dinner date. For the rest of the month. And this is a person who's making almost double what the federal minimum wage is at $15 an hour. Now has a couple $100, $250 a month to spend in discretionary income. And you think you want to raise your rates from $500 to $600, or let alone $750, or let alone $1,000? Those people literally cannot afford that. At $15 an hour, they literally can't afford more than $500 a month. So then, when you get to the point where you are either acquired by a company for an investment vehicle and you raise your rates, or you get to the point where you realize that your all-inclusive rate at $500 a month has to include electricity, or you need to raise rates because your insurance has gone up or whatever else, and you do all that stuff, there's a whole chunk of people, especially in an affordable housing situation on that lower end of RV parks, right, long-term, who are no longer going to be able to even afford staying at a long-term RV park. The fuck do those people go, Scott?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that is the question of the day.
And we're not even talking about inflation. Like, we're not even talking about the fact that, like, maybe you get a 3% raise, but, like, everything else in your life is up 20%.
Right.
And so you're really, like, your 250 is worth 17% less than it was last year, even though it's the same 250 with everything else in your life. So at what point, like, where do those people go? So this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't have an answer for this, but I don't think it's being thought through by all the people who are just saying, like, we're just going to convert to a long-term RV park and we'll be fine, right?
Right. Because the minutia that's involved is it gets elevated for a long-term park. Smaller things become bigger because someone's staying there long-term, and yeah.
And I mean, you could argue that, like, if you get a boomer retired couple who wants to stay at your park long-term for $1,200 or whatever it is at a nicer RV resort, then they don't have gas, and maybe they own their car, or at least their RV, and they don't have a payment on it, right? And so you could argue they have a little bit more disposable income, but you're facing the same trap with them as everybody else, is that all their costs are going up too. So what happens when you need to raise your rate? Like, this is headed toward an ugly ending that at some point is going to hit somebody somewhere, whether it's the owner or the consumer or both.
I would say probably both.
But the point is it doesn't make lower income RV parks nearly as attractive, or even switching to long term, especially if you're a seasonal long term and you're only getting this for 6 months, right?
Right.
So I don't know where that market goes.
I think there's a lot of these scenarios are going to play themselves out in the next I don't know, probably the next 9 months, even by the time next season rolls around for kickoff, because we hear about these conversations every day about parks, whether or not they convert to long term, whether or not this is their model. The new parks that are thinking of doing it, from the get go, what's their mix, if at all? It's these are real conversations that are happening right now, and a lot of people are putting their eggs in one basket or the other.
Well,
At
they're
this
putting
point.
it, to be fair, like they're putting it in the only basket they can put it in, right? If you are mostly a transient RV park who has not thought through all of the individual things that, like, I don't know, not just us, but people have been talking about, like feasibility studies and market studies and understanding who your demographic is, and all, like, most of the industry has done, to be fair, for the last 60 years. If you're one of those parks and you're looking at like a down whatever percentage they were last year, let's call it on a macro level 2-3%, right? Is that fair for last year?
Yep.
And then on top of that, you're down now another, let's call it 6 to 8% this year, and be nice to people, right? Again, macro level, not everybody.
Yep.
Then, like, at some point, the only move you have is to look around you and say, like, well, the transient RV business isn't here right now, so I've got to pivot to long term. That's my only play right now. It's a short term fix for my problem. I don't have anywhere else to go. So then you almost are forced into this trap in some ways, not by your own choosing. Although one could argue, like, right, if you just hindsight's 2020, right? There's so many things that if I would have done differently, I would have known, and I would, right?
Right. I mean, that's all people can do, though. Is you make the best decision you can at the moment with the information.
But I think you get. I think is it pigeonholed the right term? I think you get pigeonholed into the only thing I can do is switch to long term, and then for a year or two, long term looks good on your books, right? Because a long term site, even at $500 a month, a converted long term site at $500 a month, if transient is down significantly, and you were a park who didn't know how to do marketing and blah 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 blah, and you're not differentiated with an experience, could be worth the same as like a transient site that was only occupied 20% of the time, or could be, if you're charging $1,000 a month, could be double income. And so all of a sudden you look like you're up 8 to 10% for the year, but it's a made up number. It's only a one-time thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, it's a tricky situation. We're not going to get to the glamping conversation today.
That's all right. We'll save it for another day.
I think it was a good. I don't know. I think it was a good.
No, I do. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a super important conversation, and I would just invite any park owner out there who's thinking about this in any way to really, really think it through. Get some really good advice. Go out and talk to some people that really know, run the numbers, figure it out. But don't just go get a yes person who's going to reinforce what you want to hear. Find someone who's willing to be critical and give you the hard truth one way or the other, because it's again, I know just from dealing with campgrounds, a lot of people are feeling pressured right now to go long term, and I can't sit here and say what to do one way or another, but it requires a lot of consideration, a lot of work.
Well, like, I mean, for sure you got to do the math, right? But I think you're going to end up seeing this industry go two ways. And I think you as an RV park owner is going to have to choose. And this is a macro level, right? Not micro. Everybody's different. You should for sure go out and, hire Greg Emmert to do feasibility studies for you. Hire Scott Bahr to look at the market research. Hire whatever, right? You got to look at these smart people we have in this industry. But I think you're going to have to take one of two paths. I think you're either going to take the easy path which is the either I die in the middle or I convert to long term and forever put myself in a place of purgatory where I'll barely be able to make ends meet, if that. And eventually I know that people are going to be priced out of the market because of inflation of my market, right? So you either do that and you go down, or you put your head on your shoulders and you hire somebody, or you come up with it yourself with AI and you go the experiential path, which, as we discussed on the show earlier, doesn't necessarily mean putting hot tubs on every site and spending millions of dollars.
Nope, not at all.
It can be a glass of prosciutto at the front desk or whatever it is, right? And I think you become that unique thing that people will seek out. And whether that's RVs and glamping is a mix, whether it's just RVs, whether it's really nice tent sites, whether it's something unique we haven't heard of before, whether it's glamping, whether it's whatever, a mix of everything. I think if you're able to tailor the guest experience, then you'll probably be fine, but that's going to require time and money.
Yep, and that's where the rubber meets the road right there.
Yeah,
it's the guest experience.
I think you're just going to have to choose, though. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
I'll put my foot in that and say that's what's going to happen in the next 5 years. You're going to start to see people be like, "Oh shit." I think you're already starting to see that, right? But I think it's.
I think so. I think it's creeping in already. Yep.
All right. Any final thoughts?
No, other than what I just said. There's a lot to this. There's so much good information that we're going to be sharing in the next few months from now to the run up to the end of this season. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming along.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode out. We're going to take off today a little bit early. I got to go unpack a bunch of spices. Scott's got some really important things to do. They're probably more important than spices. We'll see you guys.
Spices are important.
They are. That's true. We'll see you guys next week on another episode of Outwired. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.